I'm Zach Ciotti. I'm one of the founders and partners with boldrush.org, a collective of creatives all around the United States that provide support and all kinds of creative things for both corporations, individuals, consulting, independent feature documentaries, motion graphics, photography, commercials for awkward products, writing, some branding, visual effects, and for agencies in some cases, just crewing or special services for things that they don't have. So let's jump into what we got today. I'm going to show you exactly how I did a visual effects trick for this agency that's in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. In this case, as a visual effects artist, I could do something that was a little out of the ordinary. In one of their shots in this commercial they were making for a client, the lighting that was in the background of the camera was showing up in the reflection in between the things in the foreground that they were filming. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just show you what the video looks like for reference here.
Data your in-house team's process can be overwhelming. That's why Cloud Factory provides the highly...
That's a lot of Rubik's Cubes. In the beginning, you see the camera move sideways. It's covering a couple of different reflections in the background in the windows here. If you look, there's one right here. It looks like it's very brief, but it's just enough to look a little cheap, right? You don't want to have your equipment being reflected in the background. You don't want to usually show that. This seemed like a pretty straightforward project to do, and so I said, challenge accepted. Let me show you how we did it. All right, so here's the new clip that they want us to work on. Fortunately for this project, the method was very procedural. The thing that I want you to look at is in this shot, well, let's check out what the original looked like. I'm going to go ahead and drop this one in on top, and we're just going to go ahead and play it on through. It's a very big reflection. It's clear that it's a light of some sort, and it's fairly distracting. Something that draws your attention off in that direction. Not only that, but there's a few other things that you might take issue with. For example, there's a little, it looks like a little strike right here, a little line of a reflection over on this side. Let's watch it again and check out how I remove these objects. That reflection's gone right here out of this window. Over here, the reflection is gone as well. First thought that came to my mind is that there are two ways to try doing this. Number one, the background is kind of difficult to get to, so I'd have to rotoscope out all the blocks, and I thought, well, I could totally do that. It's just one part on the screen here. It wouldn't take very long. Maybe I'll use the roto brush. Unfortunately, that would take significantly longer. It would take a lot of processing power from your computer, and it's super glitchy. It's not a very good tool, unfortunately. That's useful for some situations, but let's not worry about that for this one. Let's pay attention to what's going on in this image right here. There is a cloudless sky in the background. Yes, there's an ombre, there's a gradient ramp, so the colors change from darker blue at the top to lighter blue at the bottom as it disappears in the horizon. But what we want to do is utilize that blank background. There's a canvas back there that is much lighter than the majority of the things that are in the foreground. So let's pause here and take a look at what we did for this image right here. So here's where the reflection would have been. There's the reflection. You see it right there. I'm going to shut that layer off and not worry about that anymore. In fact, I'll even delete it so I can clean up the area. Now, there are two sides of this. The right reflection, which I'll switch that one off and show you. There it is again. You can see the difference if we remove the left reflection here like this. Check it out. Disappears just like that. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and restore this to its correct mode. And it's all clean. Looks gorgeous. It's working out great. Okay, so what's the method that I use? That's the big question right now. So let me just jump in and show you. On the right side, we're only going to look at that one, and then we'll do an example of this whole thing for another clip that they wanted me to redo. So going into this pre-composed composition here, right here is where the artifact was. There are 3 layers. This is a very procedural, this is the best way I can describe it. It is a procedural method of doing this when you have a background like this. So again, we don't have to worry about the things in the foreground as much, but let's focus on what I needed to do to get rid of this in the background. I'm just going to highlight this one, the clean plate, and you'll see there are 2 things going on here. It has a mask, and so if I hit M on the keyboard, you'll see the keyframes I did for the mask to adjust its shape a little bit, and I'm going to hold Shift P so that I can also see at the same time the position keyframes right here. And so if we run through that, we can see, yep, it has some movement going on. And the reason I did that was because I needed to follow where that reflection was. The reflection, because there was this parallax of the panes on the window, on the glass, it was moving back and forth. It was partially covering up that reflection. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what the background is. I'm going to solo that one by hitting this button. The background is just the normal one. I'm going to abbreviate that as always with BG. This is the background layer, and this is the one that is just going to remain in the background. But if I turn this one off here, I'm going to switch off the eyeball, you're going to be able to see what I did. For those of you who understand After Effects, you're going to immediately be able to tell, wow, this is a pretty slick way to go about this. That's right, so check it out. We have a clean plate that exists right here between the full background. Clean plate right here. If I solo that one, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the mask and switch it to none so you can see exactly what it looked like. This is not normal, right? This is some funny looking shapes here. So what I did was I brought a screen grab of this entire shot into Photoshop, and I did a lot of photoshopping right here so I could make sure I had some space that was very accurate to the ramp that you see back there, so there wasn't color variation on the y-axis. Though let's solo the top layer. This is the interesting one. This is where I turned the artifact transparent. And yes, a lot of this becomes transparent, and you look at this and maybe think, is that just some keying that he's doing? And essentially it's some keying, but it was a matte. Let's go ahead and double click onto this pre-composition here, and you'll be able to see exactly what I did. Okay, it's two of the exact same layers, one stacked on top of each other. And right in here, we're going to go to Effects Controls and look at that top layer. Yep, you've probably seen this before. I'm going to switch that one back on again, and you can see what it looks like. And so I've turned everything black and white by having the output cycle switch to ramp gray, and then I added a couple of nodes right here, a black one and a white one, so I could adjust this not to make the entire background transparent like so, but to just focus on where does that artifact become transparent. Let's see what that looks like. So the top layer is the one with the colorama effect that's made everything black and white, and you've adjusted what's black and what's white and how much and how that exposure looks. The bottom layer is just your normal regular layer, right? With both of them switched on, you go to the track matte and you go down to Luma inverted matte. Click that thing. All right, so look what we did. We used the top layer as a matte. We used the Luma inverted as an alpha layer. So it's using this top layer luminance to cut out that part of the bottom layer. And so the top layer really isn't visible here. It's just a reference piece so that you can key out that specific part of your image. And so now we see the checkerboard in the background, and like everyone who uses these creative apps knows, that means it's the alpha channel. It's transparent. Pretty simple, right? So I removed it. That's all I did. Let's go ahead and close this pre-composition down here. That's the transparent part. Again, I'm going to solo that top layer, the transparent part. I just group them together into one pre-composition so it'd be simple. I could have left them both in here in this composition, but I thought I'd clean it up a little bit. With that one right there, and the clean plate underneath it, I'm just soloing each of these, and the background that was the full version, unkeyed, let's just solo the top layer and then the bottom layer here. You can see that it's just filling in that keying that we just did. And then again, throwing in the clean plate, you just need to keep it exactly where it is. And you do that with keyframes. How fun is that? It's as simple as that. It's almost that simple. So what you have to do is make sure that when you do these keyframes, I'm going to pull up the position, I'm going to pull up the mask. The position, if we look right here, what do we see? We see this is all straight horizontally across, right? So there is no variation on the y-axis. Position, again, we keep it at 1080, but the x-axis is the only one that we moved. And the reason why we would not be moving up and down on the y-axis is because of the fact that there is a gradient here. It is darker blue right at the top than it is at the bottom. Let's go up to info. You can see right here in this panel, it is darker blue up here. Watch the color values change. We go down, it is changed However, slightly, these values have changed. And so that means if we were to move it up or down, we would be struggling to hide the fact that the top of this clean plate is darker here and that the bottom is lighter there. So that's how I did it. It's still not quite that simple. There's still something else that needs a little bit of an adjustment here. So I'm just gonna do it again and show you exactly how I did it. So this is how the tutorial is going to work today. The first half that I just showed you is basically that overview, everything that I did the first time I pulled this off, and now I'm going to show you a very long version of a nice slow walkthrough for those who want to follow along. So buckle up and I hope you enjoy. Don't feel obligated to subscribe, but how neat would that be if you subscribed? And I'm just going to keep this one open just so we can refer back to that if we forget any of the steps. This is not a bad thing to do. Let's drop it into a new composition, and bam, here it is. All right. And so this one we're going to rename to New Rubik's Cube. The other thing I had actually removed was at the very end here, after the hand comes in, there is a light stand thing that happens over here. Light stand, I hid it right under here in this layer. Let's double click on that one and take a look. Turn off the top, turn off the bottom. I took a couple of layers into Photoshop. As you can see right here, I'm gonna go ahead and look at the masks. I'm gonna turn them both off so we can see these layers. Yep, same exact concept. I took a screen grab of the last frame and I painted it out in Photoshop, so check it out here. Some fun things that I'm always doing here, rolling the wheel on the mouse. If you hold the Alt key and you hover your cursor directly over where you want to zoom in, that's where it's going to zoom into. Fun little tip there for you. There's a couple of different things that needed changed. I needed to duplicate parts of it, and I had a couple of different things moving, both on the mask and on the position, so there you can see all the different keyframes, and that's just another thing I did because I'm a nice guy. We do need to cut out the background. We want to be able to see what this looks like here. Add Colorama, and if you haven't used anything from videocopilot.net, I suggest you go over there and get what's called the VFX console. It's this little command prompt where you can hit, instead of, on a Mac where you hit Command Space, you can pull up the spotlight and type in whatever you want right there, and you can pull it up and it opens up the app or the file that you need, right? So what this console does here, wherever your cursor is, I'm going to hover it right here so you can see it. I set it to Control Space, and that pulls up the console right here. And really all I needed this for was for effects. This is the easiest way to go grab effects. Once you've gotten to know effects and presets as well as I have in After Effects, then you just have it all memorized and know exactly what you're looking for the most part. So let's type in Colorama, and I'm sure there's other ways to do this. This is just one fun way for me to do it. Let's go to Output Cycle. We're gonna drop this down and look for Ramp Gray. Bam, there it is. We're gonna add a black node. We're gonna bring that on down somewhere around here. And look, there it is. Okay, so that's what we wanna see. We're gonna try to focus on getting that cut out right there. We're gonna add another white node right here. We don't wanna overblow it, but we do want to remove it just enough. So the gray right here starts to disappear when you pull this little node down, right? You start blowing out all the other highlights as well, but let's undo, go back. We're gonna try to find a nice happy medium. I do want all that gray to disappear. So we're gonna start with that right there. And of course, all the brights, everything is going to be removed, right? If you do stuff like this where you're accidentally moving stuff around like I just did, you could hit undo again and again and again, or like when I had to zoom out there, I'm just gonna select the layer, hit Control Alt and F to fit the screen, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So there's our matte that we're gonna use. I'm gonna duplicate this, gonna get rid of the Colorama layer on the bottom, because on the bottom it's just gonna look like the original. So on the top is the track matte. We're gonna go to Luma Inverted Matte. Here it is. Now I want to see what this looks like exactly in the background. And I can see, and maybe you can't tell here, but I'm going to turn off the checkerboard, just make it the black background, and there you have it. Okay, we do see something going on here, right? Let's go ahead and open up this effect one more time and see the kind of adjustments that we were making, right? So what we're gonna do is take both of these, hold Control-Shift-C if you're using a Windows. We're gonna call this right reflection, removal, hit enter. Okay, so both of those things have gone into the pre-composition right there. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And what I want to do again is, I could have made several different copies of this right off the top, but I'm going to drag one in at the background right here. And we're going to do our little Photoshop work right now. So you're going to hit Control-Alt-Save, and that's going to throw this frame into the render queue where it's immediately under the setting for Photoshop. I'm going to grab this. See, this is where I had all my renders before. This is named the same exact title of the project, and you can see that the exact time and time code is listed there as well in parentheses. But I had this on half quality, so that's only HD instead of the 4K UHD that they had. So let's go ahead and do that again. Control-Alt-S and hit enter. Bam, saved it for us like a boss. I love Photoshop as well. I'm going to totally show you some amazing things that you can do with a tablet like this. I'm going to hit the F button so it's full screen, which is my favorite way to do any of this stuff. We're going to go hit L, and we're going to see, I'm just using my keyboard, but I do have the ability to use the hotkeys on this tablet, which is super, super exciting. So let's go ahead and outline this with the lasso tool. It looks kind of like that. We're going to hit on the keyboard Shift Backspace, and we're going to get this little fill dialog box. It's set to content aware, which is Photoshop's brilliant method of understanding what's around it and filling it in with something similar. So let's hit OK. Now, how well did we do? All right, let's take a look. With your screen, you want to be aware that the viewing angle could affect what you're seeing and how well you did on that shot here. So I see there's a little bit of something happening right in this spot right here. So let's take this part one more time. I'm just going to circle it, hit Shift Backspace one more time, hit OK, and click away again and see how we did. Looks pretty smooth. I think maybe I see a little bit of something, but most people aren't going to notice the kind of work that you do, unfortunately. This is like one of the saddest facts about being a visual effects artist. Your work is rarely appreciated, because if it's noticed, then you're not doing your job. Yeah, if I take a step back, this looks great. I like it. I like what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing a whole lot of problems right here. Let's go ahead and step out of that. Let's hit Command S or Control S if you're on a Windows like I am still. And we're going to go right back up to, oh, isn't this a great background? Man Juice. This is a juice box from the Baltics in Latvia. Sulu virinš taka nieku sniedzman svaigumu un prieku. Translated here in the strangest of ways. This is multi-fruit juices. Kind of delicious. A funny juice man being restless gives me joyfulness and freshness. Yeah, it does. It's true. Ooh, and that's where my wife and I got married. So we're going to open this right back up. We're going to drag this into the project like this. We're going to drag it right in here. We're going to put it between the background layer. We're going to call this BG. If you want to rename a layer in After Effects, you just select it and hit the Enter key, and then you can start typing and hit Enter again, and there you have it. Okay, so this one we're going to call Clean Plate. Clean Plate. There's your clean plate. We're going to ignore the clean plate for just a minute. We're going to shut that off. We're going to keep it selected and use our pen tool by hitting the G, because G stands for pen, I guess. And we're going to cover this spot. Now, I know that this flag, this must be a flag right here. If you think about this, there's a light right here, big soft light, and then something very square. This looks like a flag they were trying to do, so they didn't brighten up the top of these Rubik's Cubes too much. At least that's what I assume they were doing. But let's go ahead and plan on having a little bit more space up here, because we don't know what the flag is going to do here. So we're going to put this to the very edge. We're going to know that this is not, well, we're going to give this a little bit of a feather too. We don't want to go crazy here. Let's go ahead and pull up feather by hitting the F button, and go here. Let's do 15 pixels maybe. I don't know. Let's solo it and see what it looks like. 15 pixels. That's a little generous. Let's cut it down to 10 and see what happens with that one. All right, clicking away. Looks pretty good. And what we want to do is hit M for the mask path. You can hit Alt Shift M or Shift Alt and P. And right here where this frame was originally screen grabbed, we are going to make sure that we start our keyframes right there, because whatever we do after this, it's going to matter, right? Again, we are not going to be changing the Y position, we're just going to be changing the X position here. Let's go to the very end. And again, you know, obviously we're not going to be using part of the Rubik's Cube for this. I'm going to hit the G button for this, hold Alt, and turn it into a Bezier node, just so we can have a nicer shape around that spot right there that we're masking out. You know what I like to do? I like to go to the beginning, to the end, or just hit Shift, page down, page up, just so I can see where things are moving. And then the first moment that I see it move out of place, let's go to the end, hit the end button. We're gonna see if there is any movement at all. Now you can see right here, because of the parallax, it's getting away from the edge. And if I click away here, I'm gonna see there's a dark edge right here. Select just these nodes. We're gonna try to find a good spot for this. Again, clicking away, you can see what it's looking like right there. Let's grab it right by the middle so we can move the position over, and we're trying to cover up that reflection there. You don't want to see it on the left, you don't want to see it on the right. Let's click away, see how it looks. Again, I'm doing this little bobbing thing just so I can see. With screens that don't have a perfect 180 viewing angle where you can see it perfectly from any angle, up or down, there is a little bit of exposure shift or color shift. By doing that, it's one way to make sure that it's not visible from any different angle, any different screen that would be different than yours, right? I think I see a little bit of that on that side. I do not want to see that dark edge over there. I'm going to make sure I keep clear. But that little bit of feathering around this mask is going to make it a little bit smoother. And if there is any edges visible because of the difference in exposure in the top and the bottom, then we'll be good to go. I'm going to hit Shift, page up. I'm going to keep moving down until I see something on the right or left, the most likely culprits of this project here. I'm going to turn it off for a second just so I can see where it's ending up. Okay, so it is shifting. That parallax, like I mentioned, is shifting a smidge, so I'm going to make sure it stays with it a little bit. We're going to keep coming back. You can just keep that layer off, in fact, just to see how things change. Let's go to the very beginning by hitting the Home key. And you know, something I noticed is the shape with the flag actually didn't change too much. So the parallax, the light and the flag must have been fairly close to each other. We're going to turn off the mask path for the mask, and we are going to make some little adjustments like this, bringing it a little bit closer. I know it does change a little bit, and I know it fades away here, so I'm going to keep this a little bit wider. Now let's go ahead and try this again. We're going to move this way. You can't grab the position and move it when it is switched off, so I'm going to move this like so. I'm going to move it ahead some more. Yeah, I see it moving there. Let's go ahead and do this. Now again, we do not want to move the position up, because if we start doing that, check out what happens. The color changes. I'm going to click away. You see the color appearing right here? This is why you do not want to move up and down on the y-axis. So all we want to do is move the mask itself. Let's expand it up there a little bit, stretch it out here. Let's see where it is. That looks pretty good. I'm going to take a look here. Think about masks. Masks are really phenomenal. You can grab it by the bar itself that you made here. You can grab it by the line that you made. You can grab it by multiple nodes by selecting one and then selecting several with the click and drag method. You can double click on just those ones, and you can resize based on these in that area. Masks are pretty dynamic. In situations like this one, I want to move in fairly minute actions. I will often just do this from my keyboard. But in some of these situations, because I've done this before, it's not frightening to me to make some quick, fast movements. So we've moved all around quite a bit. I've clicked away so I can just pay attention to what the colors look like and see by my naked eye if there's any shift in colors or if there's anything peeking out the edge of that mask. Yep, and there it is right there. See it? Gotcha, little guy. What are you doing over here? Let's move that one over there like this. I don't know why this got all wonky here. Let's pay attention to that. It did get a little wonky. We do not need to render this whole thing. We know exactly where it's going to be. We're going to click on this. This little button down here is a region of interest selector. So this is the only area we want it to render, right? We do not want to see anything before or after that. We do not want to render, if we do not want to render the entire thing, we're going to keep it right about there. This should render a smidge faster. We're just focused on the region of interest. Let's render from the beginning. I'm keeping it on full just so I can make sure I'm seeing all the different pixels and everything that might be changing in this image. I'm seeing it peek through right here. I saw a little color variation on the left side. And we're going to address each of these issues as soon as this is finished. It looks best closer to the area where we did the screen grab, which is not surprising because that's where all the colors would have remained exactly the same. We're going to see what we can get away with without getting too detailed in here. Because again, you want to focus on the things in visual effects that the people are going to see. The audience usually isn't looking for the kind of things that the visual effects artists are looking for. There is always a point where it's good enough. And that's not a bad thing. That's a smart thing. All right. Well, that looks pretty good. Let's go back over here where I see it peeking around. Let's pull this over here, hide that a little bit. Without needing to use the mask tool at all, we're just using the position tool. I'm going to pay attention again to the beginning right here. I think I see a little bit of color variation. And again, we're zoomed into a very, very tight little space here that most people are not going to be paying attention to. And when you do visual effects work, for the most part, you want to be very closely connected to whoever's doing the coloring, or you want to be able to do the coloring yourselves. In this situation, they did the coloring and handed it over to me, so I know exactly what it's going to look like in the end. This isn't the only kind of thing you'll see on my channel. Sometimes I do reviews for extremely helpful little pieces of equipment. Sometimes I show you adventure vlogs when I'm out filming for interesting clients, or continuing the story of my company Bold Rush co-producing and myself co-hosting a television show in Moldova. All right, so let's take a look at this. Turn off our region of interest. Another one of my favorite hotkeys is Shift / or Shift ? And bam, you get to see the entire thing fit to 100% to fill the screen. Loving what this looks like. Another one of my favorite little keys is the tilde or grayscale key that you see up in the upper left, right before the number 1. Hit that and you go full screen on the majority of the Adobe products. Another nice habit to get yourself into is hitting Command or Control S to make sure that you are saving every time you move around. All right, so now that we've finished the removal on this side here, I realized that this wasn't the best naming convention. Let's go ahead and call this something a little bit different. Let's call this what it is. It's a transparent artifact. All right. Let's call it that because that's what it is. Control Shift C, and we're going to call this one right reflection removal because that's what this one is. Okay, we're going to mask this one out by hitting the Q key and adding a mask right here like so. And then we're going to just focus on what's going on down here and create the exact same organization as we did over here. So again, right here, we're going to duplicate this one, create a background, and this is going to be the transparent one here. And so we're going to go ahead into the right reflection removal, transparent artifact, and we're going to steal the effect Colorama from this one with all of its settings. And we're going to put that, let's go ahead and shut this. That gets confusing when we jump back in there. This one we're going to paste to there, and then we can see what that looks like. That's kind of neat. Do the track matte trick again. And, you know, what I'm seeing right here is some of that's getting removed, but certainly not all of it is getting removed. So let's shut this off. And if you wanted to make some adjustments here, you could do some things like this. I'm gonna remove that a smidge more. I do not want to see any of that reflection right there. What we saw was something else, something a little bit more than that white strike. We see kind of like this boxy shape around it. This looks like, you know what this looks like? I think what this is here's the light and here is the softbox. I found you out. We're going to pre-compose these two and call this the transparent artifact left. And then we're going to take that screenshot like we did before. Control Alt S, and we're just going to save that as Let's go ahead and pull it up right here. Which one was it? It was, let's see, our time code was 22 frames. Here's the 22 frames right here on this one. Double click on that. Open up Photoshop and then jump right back down in here with your pen and start removing stuff. You can't tell, but I'm trying to do this with my mouse down here. And it's way worse. We're going to drag this one right back into here. So here it is in After Effects. Again, the way the mode goes is that these three become the new left reflection removal. And there's your two pieces, right? Let's double click on this one so we can dive in. We're going to rename this to Clean Plate again. And take a look at what we need to do. Alright, so we're going to mask this out. G key. So we're going to zoom in again right here like so. We're going to get rid of some of this here. Hey, you can't even tell what's going on. Now let's solo this. Make sure with F that we're adding sufficient feather. Oh, looks pretty good. Nice feather right there. And by the way, this little button can toggle the masked visibility in case you want to see what something looks like. Snap to full view on the solo and check it out. Okay, so we definitely want to do a Alt-Shift-P position. We want to Alt-Shift-M for mask path. And we're going to keep these up here. If you just want to call off all of your keyframes, just hit the U button and you'll be able to see them all. I'm just going to do a quick little movement back and forth here and see if I can notice anything on this side, on that side. Yeah, it looks like I am successfully getting rid of that little slash that appeared there. Now, if I were to remove this, let's turn that off, see what it looks like. The little light sliver that we see does change its position here. Let's go ahead and see where that is. So there was the light position. You kind of can't tell, but it's right here, right in this exact spot. I'm going to turn it back on, and I'm going to move this. I can't move this out because this is where we bump into things on the side. We're going to drag this whole thing and move the position over. So this is maybe the only keyframe that we have to do. It's not a very difficult thing to get to know After Effects. Knowing your way around After Effects in such a way that the tools begin to mean new things to you, that when you see a new problem that you've never dealt with before and you can tell yourself, it's an opportunity, not a problem, it is solved before it happened. Be brave and be willing to say, yes, I can do this, I can figure this out, and the opportunities that will come to you will be immense, gratifying, and make you a better visual effects artist in the end. Let's render it on through and watch what happens. I am seeing a little bit of something appear right here. I do want to say, because I am far enough from the edges here, I might be able to add a little bit more of a feather. So I'm going to call up the feather and maybe make this a 15 instead. I do want to solo this to make sure I'm not bumping into the edges here. So hopefully that turns out pretty well. With that turned off, I just want to make sure I'm not too close to that edge and showing anything on that side. I want to make sure all my nodes are doing exactly what I want them to do. Make sure we're away from the edges enough. Something like that. This one I think I might turn into a Bezier just because I can. The region of interest could get you a little bit too focused on what's going on over there. I'm going to turn it off just so that we can take a step back and realize it's more important to see the overall differences, which may be minute or may be great. If you can see everything, your eyes are kind of trained to analyze very quickly. And what you can do in the situation is see with your eyes like what the overall background color is supposed to look like, and if there's anything that's offbeat, then your eyes are going to be attracted to it. If it's different, if it's moving, your eyes are attracted to these things. And yes, there is a lot going on here. Lots of different colors. They're a lot more eye-catching than those background reflections, but it's enough when there's something different. When we see the sky, we know what to expect. Our brains have been trained to do that through thousands of generations, right? I'm just keeping my eye up on this area right here to make sure that nothing is really out of the ordinary. Now I'm seeing something way rough right there. Let's see what happened. Let's make sure my keyframes are active, and I'm moving this on over. And alley-oop. By the way, did you know alley-oop is French? Did you know cul-de-sac is French? Cul-de-sac, which I'm sure is pronounced entirely differently, that just means dead end in French. Wouldn't it be nice to live at a dead end? Live the American dream in a dead end? That'd be nice. That sounds great. But what do we know? We don't speak French. We just use French all the time. Anyway, let's watch this render through one more time. All right, so I am seeing a little funky little thing right here. I feel not only sad, but betrayed. How could you? What is this? What's going on? I know it's not really black. This looks like a region of interest problem or something. I zoom in, I zoom out. It all stays the same. What you want to do? Go to Edit, and then go down to Purge. You're going to purge all memory and disk cache, okay? The things you learn after days on the phone with Adobe support. Useful life skills. I am seeing a little bit of color variation over here, and I consider that an issue, but truthfully speaking, it may not be that big of a deal because of the fact that we're moving so quickly and maybe no one cares. So again, we have the one side masked off like you see right here. The other side is underneath it. This is the layer underneath, this is the layer on the top. We've done both sides. So how neat is that? Visual effects for agencies. This is something that I, one of the partners of boldrush.org, was able to learn how to do all on my own. Something that I learned a little bit from in school, definitely from a lot of books, definitely from tutorials online, and from a lot of problem solving, a lot of trying to figure things out, coming up with ideas, and making it work. Let's take a look and see how we did. Awesome. Well, how great is that? I mean, at a glance, what are you going to be paying attention to? You're going to be paying attention to all the blocks. Like, wow, hey, doesn't this kind of look like a city? Maybe that looks a little bit like Raleigh now that I think about it. Thank you for watching. I am so pleased to be able to share some things that I've learned, and I will have plenty of other interesting things to show you in the future. If you stay, if you subscribe, watch some more of my videos, you're going to keep up to date with what boldrush.org is doing all across the country and around the world now that I'm doing some TV show hosting in Moldova, one of the smallest little places in Europe. I'm going to start showing you some of the traditional type of skills that I picked up when I was a little kid when my dad taught me how to draw. And you can see how I ended up making drawings like the ones here on my wall. I've got this idea. I'm actually going to go through and pick out some of my old drawings I did that I was really proud of, and I'm going to try coloring them because I don't usually ever paint in Photoshop, but mainly utilize those skills for something useful in your career, such as storyboarding, which is something that I can't wait to share with you in the future. Next year is coming up really fast, and there's going to be a lot of cool stuff to show off. So please, again, stay tuned. Get out there, do the brave thing today. Happy New Year, happy birthday to me this month, and please, again, comment below, ask me if you have any questions. I love to hear from you in the YouTube community. It is really cool to be able to share stuff. After Effects is the thing that I really started my career with, starting with that portfolio right when I entered into college. The books that I read and the projects that I worked on, every chance that I had to volunteer some time, even sometimes where I made some silly decisions about spending 50 hours on a $200 gig just so I can have some portfolio work to show off. It is incredibly useful to have a portfolio, and I hope that what you are gaining from this is adding to your encouragement and to your ability to gain that portfolio. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you later.